last week just overtopped that and flooded and washed some of that out. That's what we were worried about with these dams. And luckily it was a pretty dry year and a half, so we did not get any major overtopping events that would have pushed them back even farther. So let's go through here. So first step was coming in and getting some former military folks, the EOD team, the UXO guys, to come out there. They would not let us as archaeologists go out there and look at all this stuff initially. They had to treat all of this potential ordnance like it was live. That was just an agreement they made with the city, with the state, and with the Corps of Engineers. Nobody wanted a potential explosion under the Germain Street Bridge as it came through. So these guys all came through and metal detected everything. And if you remember kind of that first thing, sort of line drawing schematic, there were a number of metal anomalies out there. But as these guys did it, every pink flag out there was a metal anomaly that they had to look at potentially as ordnance. So they would dig them up. They would call us in if they found something, and it kind of was cordoned off in a little bit of an area. They set up their own powder magazine out here for all the explosives that potentially could come up through there. And that's it's a real thick-sided, just solid steel closet, essentially. But the top of it isn't attached. So if something was in there and it exploded, it would follow path of least resistance and explode up and not out. So all the people in the condominiums across the river there would not be affected out there. They were very concerned about that. But these guys were great, and we were down there, helping them monitor. We couldn't walk with them, but they would come up, with bullets and mini balls, and there's one of the 10-inch cannonballs. So, this was a pretty good analysis. But again, they had to kind of understand that potentially these were filled with some black powder. And one of the problems with black powder is that if it gets wet and stays wet, it's fine. But if it gets wet and then dries out, it becomes really unstable. So we all became pretty quick bomb disposal technicians out there. And this is a great book. On the first page of this book, it says something like the instructions in this book are for entertainment purposes only. And you have to sign your name when you bought that book. You will not use these to deactivate any bombs that you find out there. So that's the only way you could buy that book, is if you signed a waiver that you would not hold that guy responsible if you blew your hand off with a bomb. So we came up with all kinds of plans about how to drill into a shell, and these are some setups that some collectors have that they've used for inerting some of the ordnance out there. So we found it, and we got out there and had to make sure nothing had black powder. So we used super scientific methods like poking it with a stick and then seeing what was in there. And this is some of the stuff the UXO guys pulled out of there. That's from the big 10-pounders and a lot of the canister shot of the various gauges and sizes that came out during the UXO. So once these UXO guys got done, let's go ahead. They brought in the heavy equipment and started pulling out all the sediment from there. What we did, we set up grids in there to try to keep some provenience of where artifacts were coming from. All the UXO guys, whenever they found something, they GPS it and shoot in the coordinates for it, just to try to find out, if there was some sections that were intact, or see if we can find some patterns of where these things were thrown. And we did end up kind of finding distinct clusters, what we think are at the ends of these three little road spurs that we saw in one of those earlier maps. But they came in with the track hose, dumped all the contaminated soil in these roll-off trucks, and they took them to this site we had at the Richland County landfill, and they moved all the sediment out there, and that's where we came and investigated it and screened it to look for the rest of the artifacts that they did not find during the UXO. And that site smelled awful. It was terrible. It was the middle of the summer, and you can't quite see, but all this white back, that's all the garbage back there. We were just on a filled-in cab of this stuff. It was awful. So one of the things we did, there was so much soil coming out of there. We knew a lot of it had been found during the metal detecting in the UXO, but we got a big mechanical screen. And this sifter screen, it went through a couple of different layers of screen. There was a inch and a half screen where we come off one of the conveyor belts, and we'd hope to get the larger ordnance and the balls and the larger cannonball stuff. And then it would go through a 1/4-inch screen where we'd hope to get the smaller artifacts out of there. So we separated into these piles, and then we took those piles and spread them out a little bit more. Got a dozer out there and spread real thin layers. We would go over them again with a metal detector. We'd go over the 1/4-inch stuff with some other screening methods and hand screen some of that stuff, and end up finding plenty of stuff that the UXO guys missed. 10 minutes? All right, we'll run through this a little bit faster. Okay. We're about done. So just some of the more different artifact recovery stuff we were going through here. So here's where, remember that Borman fuse that I talked about? So UXO guys missed it. It got picked up by a giant track hoe, dumped in a roll-off container with all the other bricks, or rocks and boulders and all the other stuff that came out of that river. Dumped into that big metal sifter, falls off a conveyor belt into all these different rocks, and one of our guys is metal detected through it. He's like, "Oh, hey, I found a cannonball," and then he's like, "This is a fused cannonball. What do we do?" And so we called the UXO guys, and again, super scientific, super safe. They just pick it up and they're like, "Well, we'll take it over. We'll take it over here." So they took it over there, but we had plans on how to remove the black powder if we were at the site, if we were down at the river. The UXO guys would be able to take it. But because it made it all the way to the landfill, it became kind of under the purview of SLED. So we had to call the bomb squad. The bomb squad came in with these blacked out F-150s up there, a big trailer in the back, and there's 3 little trucks up here, and they take it off to Fort Jackson, and then they blow it up, and it becomes probably the last Civil War exploded ordnance in the Civil War itself. And it's gone. We got a lot of pictures, but they could, they must have just packed it with C4, and there was nothing left. We couldn't save the fuse. We couldn't save anything. So we got as much as we could out of it, but we're pretty disappointed on that one. And then here's just a quick list of what we found out there. We found hundreds of Civil War artifacts out there, and some are back there. You can look at it a little bit more. Also, during the course of it, kind of down the bottom, there were
real good timing.
When they ended up cleaning up tons and tons of just garbage and junk out there, we ended up finding 3 or 4 different handguns and a shotgun that we turned over to SLED. There's a lot of historic glass and ceramics. We found a number of Native American pottery and projectile points. So they ended up doing an excellent job of cleaning up just the junk that was on that river. So it's a really nice cleaned up area itself. So that's what was found out there. And here's kind of our next steps of what we're doing. One of the cooler things we found. So remember that story of the explosion that took place down there? Blew up 3 wagons and killed Captain Davis. We found a Civil War era wagon wheel hub. And we had folks from the relic room come over and take a look at it. And they say that the spokes on that hub are charred, and it looks like potentially that was an explosion. So I don't know if it is or not, but that's the story we're telling. It was thrown in there. And so the idea, and I'll get to it in the next slide, the idea is Dominion Scanner, they're donating all the artifacts to the relic room in the State Museum, and we're going to build out a display to talk a little bit about the ordnance dump itself and kind of how it got there and a little bit of this back history. One of the other things we found was a Douglas sword. This is interesting. It's a Confederate sword. At first we thought it might have been Captain Davis's as an officer's sword. He apparently should have had one when he was killed by that explosion. But it's hard to see in that picture. But it's CWS on there. and it's a Douglas sword which was forged in Columbia, South Carolina. So somehow that got thrown in with all the other ordnance and thrown into the river itself. So right now everything's going through electrolysis. A lot of the ones back there are complete with their conservation. Runs through and a little electrical current comes and knocks up all the rust and gets rid of the oxygenation. Then it gets dipped into this microcrystalline wax and it gets that real black kind of conserved look to it that's going to preserve it for forever, really, out there. And then we'll come around to places like this and do some talks and let the public kind of take a look at it. But the ultimate goal is to get everything into the Confederate relic room and have a display out there. And then I just want to touch base and thank some folks out here. A lot of the Dominion folks were great during this project. Jim Legg, who helped with the presentation, Mona Grundin was out there and instrumental in getting this project done and complete. WC and Jim Spyrex, the state underwater archaeologist. And then the folks at the Corps and SHPO and SKIA and the relic room. And now it is all gone, like it never happened. Rip wrap everywhere, it's all taken up.
Yeah, let's just 1 second before we get to questions. First of all, thank y'all for coming out. This guy's a rock star because we've never had this many people here for a presentation. We're going to have to knock out a room or two and get some more seats. So we're sorry about that. If you didn't get a chance to sit down this evening, we do have a YouTube channel. We'll try to have this up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days so you can take a look at it again. And I was wondering if the people that didn't get to see the slideshow, maybe you could run it again for them right at the end.
Oh, yeah, everybody was coming. We can run through a couple
of
things.
So let's have a couple of questions.
And then, if some of you folks that came in later, after, just keep out of the way. And there better be like the exact number of artifacts back there. I got it down.
See, there's a rascally fellow back there.
Can we touch on it?
Yeah.
What is the obstruction point?
Oh, yeah, so if you have seen, or been to any old Civil War reenactment sites or Battle of Camden even, Red Fort, there's those picket fences, those spiked fences, the wooden kind of pickets out there, and these, they wrap in metal and had them in the river on the shore, we think on the shoreline, and it's just a way to kind of impede and slow down the troops coming in, to block any rafts that might be coming over. The metal would potentially spike the rafts and sink them or anything like that. Yeah, Keith's holding it up there. So it's just a spike that would have gone on, a wooden spike pole, and potentially, get in there. They're usually for stopping cavalry charges and making the horses slow down. But we think there's some out there that were either set up at the Columbia side of the Gervais Street Bridge, at the end of the bridge, to slow things down, or in the river itself to stop any boats that might have been trying to sneak over.
There's wood in there.
That's wood in there. Yep.
So they were mounted on.
So yeah, we had long, 5-6 foot pole, all kind of spiked up like that.
So essentially, the coal tar protected this?
It did.
So there was a good side to that.
Yep. So it did protect it, kind of kept some of that stuff in place, kind of protected it a little bit from some of the rusting over there. So the coal tar was a pain to get off on some of these things, but once it was, they were largely clean underneath there. So it kind of did preserve it a little bit in that place. So it wasn't bad.
How did you protect? You saw people with hard hats and vests. I didn't see any gloves. How did you guys all protect yourselves from the coal tar?
Well, the coal tar itself, we did have gloves when we were handling a lot of that stuff. Some of the stuff came out pretty clean, especially after it got kind of knocked off in that shaker screen out there. But the coal tar itself, it smells bad and it is sticky, but it's not going to burn you like something else out there. So we had some folks wore gloves. A lot of it was just kind of picking through the rocks and picking some stuff up, and then we just quickly put it in bags, that type of thing. But when we've been handling it to go into conservation and electrolysis, we'll wear just sort of the rubber gloves to get them in there and clean them off a little bit. You know, we'd brush them off, you know, in a sink real quick. And there's a chemical called Biosolve, and it's sort of what these guys use to spray off their trucks and some of that stuff. So we dip it in there real quick and try to spray it off as much as possible.
So, were the armaments so different between the Confederates and the Unions that they couldn't have been interchangeable?
Largely.
And because of the irregularity evidently with the Confederate munitions, did they work with all the Confederate?
No, you had different types of guns and different types of cannons that would go with specific armories, and it was like a you know so the Confederates got sort of a loose confederation of different armorers and armories building their manufacturing their cannons and their guns, and the way I guess that those guys would make money would be like, you can only use our, like Apple, you can only use our cannonballs, you can only use our cannonballs and you want to use our guns somewhere out there. Whereas the Union was more, you know, formalized into the very militaristic in their specifications, and every contract they had to be this, and this size and this size, because they wanted to be used anywhere and everywhere. And the Confederates were, you know, people from Alabama made their own guns and brought their own guns, and people from South Carolina brought their own guns out there, and cannons out